It was with the rise of the British port cities of Calcutta and Bombay that the Marwaris rose. They chased new opportunities using old familiar community networks. And as India became the center of regional trade, the Marwaris became the connectors, managing supply chains deep within. Over 400 years after they began their journey out of their homes, Marwaris today dominate business, large and small. From Jammu in the north to Chennai in the south, from Meghalaya in the east to Mumbai in the west. But one city that has been pivotal in their story is Kolkata. The Goenkas were amongst the earliest Marwaris to settle here way back in 1820. Founded by Ramdas Goenka, who migrated to Kolkata from Dhundlod in Rajasthan, the group grew rapidly under Sir Badridas Goenka, who was a visionary and the first Marwari to graduate from the Presidency College in Kolkata. He laid the foundation of an empire that straddled across Calcutta and Mumbai. His son RTE Goenka, on his part, shook up corporate India as he blazed the trail acquiring companies. Sanjeev Goenka, his son, tells me what it was like growing up.
We had a very disciplined childhood. So though we lived at home, it was like a hostel kind of an existence, where your hours of waking up, your hours of studies, you're going to school, bathing, etc., eating were all defined, and you couldn't violate those by even like 3 minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
That much discipline?
Very much so. So at 8:45 in the evening, lights would be turned off in the room. You had to wake up at 6. At 6:30 you had to be at your study table. 8:30 you went in for a shower. 10 to 9 you left for school, etc. And you had to go and meet the elders, every elder in the family, every day. And ours was a joint family. So it was my father, his 2 brothers, my grandfather and my great-grandfather. So you had to meet everyone. And we actually grew up believing we had 3 sets of parents. So my father, mother, and my father's 2 brothers, my 2 uncles and aunts. So it was actually a regimented, somewhat distant, but a fascinating childhood, because we were 8 cousins growing up together. And, when there are 8 kids living together, sharing everything, you automatically learn to give and take.
They say the family is very big in the family business of a Marwari, right? That's a general sense. But tell me about this familial connection, because historically speaking, it was this, every Marwari went and got his family with him, his brothers, his nephews, and that's how the whole spread happened, and it was a fascinating community that built up.
I think in those days it was very important, because in the British Empire, you couldn't trust too many people. So it was your family you fell back upon. And the family was unified not as much by emotion, but more by a common economic goal or a common economic base, and more to gain and lose together. And the relationship was divided into 2 parts. One was that of brothers or cousins, and the other was that of partners. And it was the partnership which became, I think, in a way overtook the family relationship. So as long as the partnership survived, the family bond survived. And when the partnership broke up, the family bonds broke up.
Your own family history is interesting, because a lot of the empire that we see today of the Goenka group were companies that were acquired, and many of these companies were stressed out companies. So, if Marwaris are known for being very, very meticulous in their finances and very sharp in the finances, I think your group is known for being able to be the turn around kings in that context. I mean, what are the traits? So when you see a company, and you've been part of many of these turnarounds, so how has that approach been, or has there been a common approach to that?
It's always easy to take over something with an infrastructure, with a base, and improve on it and build on it, rather than start something from scratch. So we've done both. We've built our power plants from scratch. We're building up our FMCG business from scratch. But on the other hand, we've taken over companies. So our power business was the company that we took over. It was a sick company, and we turned it around. We took over a BPO company and turned it around. And we've done this, and we've done this successfully. We are able to do it. We read people well. We read situations well. We are genetically adaptable. So following a base process in place, you adapt to the requirements of that industry or that organization or that set of people. The change that we've brought about now, for example, is that you have to be extremely accountable through your performance. And if you're not able to deliver, then Charlie Boy, it's curtains.
That's interesting. But I'm going to come back. Is there a rule book, a thumb rule book of how you approach a company, and which you've probably picked up from your grandfather, your father? You've seen them work, and you've seen them work on companies and turnarounds.
So my grandfather and my father both had a voracious appetite for taking over companies.
That's putting it mildly. In the case of your father.
And I was involved with him in many of these transactions. He was very instinctive.
Yeah.
He was extremely instinctive. But purely an instinctive approach was brilliant for a controlled environment. In a completely free environment, in a very highly competitive environment, it's as much about the instinct or the gut as about the logic and the merit. So when we look at companies, we look at both, and then we take a call.
The 60s saw the emergence of some of today's marquee business groups, and the Marwari community thrived during the license permit Raj. On the eve of India's liberalization in 1990, a bulk of the companies in the BSE top 30 were Marwari owned. Today, they're only a handful. Sanjeev Goenka believes the problem lies within.
Where you start believing that you are going to occupy the chair only because you are the son or the nephew of ABC, I think that's a disaster. Because you are the son, you get a preference. But you have to be no less competent than anyone else. In fact, you have to be more competent. And I think competency is the key. So there are lots of inheritors who have actually gotten professional management. And look at the Dabur family.
Sure.
They're not Marwaris, but they're a prime example of how they've delegated management and they want to enjoy good life. And so they're enjoying great valuations and they're enjoying a great life. That's fine. That's a model. It's a successful model. And then there are enough examples of people who are hands-on and successful in driving their businesses. And bulk of Indian industry is replete with those kind of examples. But the fundamental core as the driving reason for success is competency. So you have to have a competent management in place. And your ability to actually just divorce your emotion from your evaluation.
You know, sitting here in Kolkata, it is a stark reminder of the number of businesses that did not survive the last 20 years as well, you know, as much as those who did and they succeeded. So I want to ask you, what were the problems? Was this the problem, the primary problem, that you had too much of dependency on family, that you had not kept pace with market changes, you were not ready to adapt? What do you think went wrong?
I think adapting and changing and reinventing, of course, was a key issue, which led to many not succeeding. But also holding on to convention for the sake of holding on to convention and using convention as an excuse for non-performance. We would just do things like this, or we ran it like this. But things have changed, situations have changed, circumstances have changed. Just change yourself. Change your processes. So, I keep hearing this from several families who still live here. This is the way we've done it forever. But that's probably enough reason for you to change it anyway. And convention in values, yes. Convention in processes which are dated, I don't know.
So you think that, that period of the way the business was done, that's over. Now it's a new India,
It's a new India.
It requires
Absolutely.
new dynamism.
It's a completely new way of looking at situations. It's a completely new speed with which you have to address decision making. It's a very fiercely competitive world. You have to be extremely competitive in your costs, in your manufacturing processes, in your delivery processes, in your logistics, in actually getting the best out of your people.
But having said this, Goenka also believes that there is a lot to say about the old Marwari system or their way of doing business and keeping it all together. We talk about the startup environment today. You're talking about concepts like angel funding, venture capitalists, networks, incubation centers. When you look at history and the rise of the Marwari community, these factors played a role in different ways. You had networks of youngsters coming out of Shekhawat and Marwar, coming into far-off areas, living in organized places where they were getting support. The family elders supported them with a little bit of venture capital. Old uncles supported them as angel investors. If you can look back and look ahead, I mean, how do you see these two constructs meeting?
I think, frankly, we as Indians discovered a lot of economic principles and policies. A lot of science was based on Indian philosophy. Astrology was the discovery of Indians. The lunar calendar is something that Indians wrote. But we never scripted them, we never shared them, we never documented them, we never passed the learning down. And so we lost it. And the Western world had taken this from India in different avatars, and they rehashed it, they renamed it, and they got back the same principles. And we are paying for what was ours as a nation today. So it's sad in a way, but I certainly hope that whatever we do now, the next generations will actually have the benefit of. And we led as a nation, and because I think of the British Raj, we learnt not to lead. It's only now, again, in the last few years that Indians are learning to lead. So you have a Mukesh Ambani, who is the richest nation in the world, and could well be the richest person in the world in a few years. So I think it's this this desire to be a leader, not in a confined concept or in a confined area, but actually just scale up your ambition, scale up your ability to lead. And that was India's strength, which we lost. And I think we are regaining it, hopefully. So you see examples in the field of cricket.
Fair enough.
So where we had nothing ever in the past. So we were always bottom of the table. Now we are always top of the table. So you have badminton. These are small examples. You have business.
Yeah. In business, for example, when we talk about startups and the entire economic structures of startups, we look towards the West for ideas of Silicon Valley. Should we be looking at our past and looking at how communities rose and how they were perhaps lessons in that rise?
I believe there are. I have not studied it enough to really say that there definitely are, but I'm sure there are. The whole concept, for example, as you just talked about, of the Basas, where they got a dwelling place, they got sustenance, they got laundry services, and they got seed capital. So they were actually free to go ahead and pursue their dreams or ambitions. That's one example, but there used to be so many other examples. So, and this whole support system that we had. So a joint family actually became a huge support system. And my great-grandfather used to say this. He said, a family is like an umbrella. So we used to ask him, what does that mean? He said, उसकी एक सीख टूटती है तो बाकी के 5 उसको ऊपर रखते हैं. So the fortunes or the happiness or sorrow of one member are not influenced by his success or failure necessarily. It's about everyone around him. And so if there is a problem, everyone's rallying around behind you. And in nuclear families, that doesn't happen. So there are pluses and minuses to both.
The Marwaris today have moved far beyond the comfort of old business legacies. Now they're charting new ones. Meanwhile, one place that they're rocking it in are the Indian stock markets.